In this episode, we move into a part of modern security operations that feels new, fast, and sometimes a little intimidating for beginners because it combines machine help with very human judgment. More teams now rely on artificial intelligence, AI, assisted security information and event management, SIEM, outputs to help sort alerts, summarize activity, and point analysts toward patterns that may matter. At the same time, many people also use large language model, LLM, tools inside workspaces to summarize findings, draft reports, and make sense of messy technical information. Those tools can be useful, but they also introduce a second challenge that is easy to underestimate. And that challenge is data leakage caused by sharing the wrong information into the wrong place. Security work is not just about spotting danger in systems. It is also about handling data carefully while you investigate. That means a good analyst must learn how to triage machine-generated security output thoughtfully and, at the same time, protect sensitive information from being exposed through careless use of helpful tools. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber-Authored.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. To understand this clearly, it helps to begin with what a SIEM is trying to do in the first place. A SIEM collects records from different parts of an environment, such as identity systems, endpoints, applications, cloud platforms, and network devices, and then helps security teams notice events that may deserve attention. On its own, a SIEM can already feel overwhelming because it can produce a very large amount of data, alerts, and activity summaries. When AI is added, the goal is usually to help people manage that flood by summarizing events, grouping related records, identifying possible patterns, and suggesting which alerts look more urgent. For a beginner, that can sound almost magical, but it is better to think of it as assisted interpretation rather than automatic truth. The system may help organize information and reduce noise, but it is still working from patterns, models, and assumptions rather than from perfect understanding. That is why the human role remains so important even when AI support is available. Triage is the decision-making step that sits between seeing an alert and beginning a full investigation. When AI helps generate a summary or a priority suggestion, triage becomes the process of deciding whether that machine output points to something real, something uncertain, or something that can be safely deprioritized for now. A beginner should not think of triage as proving exactly what happened beyond doubt. Instead, triage is about making a sound early judgment based on evidence, context, likely impact, and urgency. An AI summary may say that several events appear related or that a pattern resembles suspicious behavior, but the analyst still needs to ask whether the evidence truly supports that conclusion. Good triage means reading the machine output as a starting point rather than a final answer. It is helpful when it saves time and organizes clues, but it becomes dangerous when people stop thinking critically and begin treating generated conclusions as though they were facts simply because they were phrased with confidence. There are real advantages to AI-assisted triage when it is used properly. A machine can process large volumes of records quickly, notice repeated structures across many alerts, and produce summaries that help an analyst get oriented faster than reading raw logs line by line. It can also help connect events that may belong together, which is especially valuable in busy environments where separate clues might otherwise look unrelated. For a beginner, this means AI can act a bit like a very fast assistant that organizes a desk covered in scattered notes. It may stack related papers together, highlight a few items, and point toward a pattern you should examine first. That sort of help can reduce fatigue and improve response time when teams are drowning in information. Even so, speed is not the same as certainty. A fast assistant can still group the wrong items, misunderstand the importance of a detail, or present a weak pattern as though it were much stronger than it really is. This is where one of the biggest beginner lessons appears, because AI output often sounds more certain than it truly is. A generated summary may use smooth, polished language that makes the result feel trustworthy, even when it is built on incomplete data, loose pattern matching, or incorrect assumptions. Sometimes the model may overstate a connection between events. Sometimes it may miss the most important clue because that clue is rare, subtle, or poorly represented in the data it was given. Sometimes it may describe ordinary behavior as suspicious simply because the pattern looks unusual in the abstract without understanding the business context. This is one reason why security teams must guard against false confidence. The risk is not only that the machine could be wrong. The greater risk is that a tired human may stop questioning the result because the explanation sounds neat and persuasive. Effective triage requires analysts to remain disciplined enough to ask what evidence exists, what may be missing, and whether the conclusion actually fits the environment they are protecting. A strong habit for working with AI-assisted SIEM outputs is to stay evidence first. That means the analyst starts with the underlying activity and treats the machine's summary as a guide rather than as proof. If the output says an account was likely compromised, the next question is not whether the sentence sounded convincing. The next question is what activity supports that claim. Were there failed logins, a successful login from an unusual place, suspicious access to sensitive data, privilege changes, or related system actions that make compromise plausible? If the output says several alerts belong to the same event chain, the analyst should check whether the timing, user identity, asset involvement, and sequence of actions actually line up. This approach protects the team from trusting a conclusion too quickly. It also improves learning, because analysts become better at understanding the underlying signals instead of becoming passive readers of machine-generated narratives. Over time, that evidence-first mindset is what keeps AI assistance useful without allowing it to weaken judgment. Context is another critical part of triage, especially when machine outputs try to prioritize alerts. An event that looks severe in one environment may be routine in another. A password reset, an administrative change, or a large data movement may deserve urgent attention in one case and be entirely expected in another depending on the user, the role, the timing, and the system involved. AI can help highlight patterns, but it does not naturally understand business meaning the way an experienced human can. A beginner should therefore learn to ask simple grounding questions. What system is involved? How sensitive is it? Who performed the action? Is the timing normal? And does this behavior make sense for that identity or service? Those questions keep triage tied to real risk instead of abstract pattern matching. Without context, AI can turn minor oddities into distractions or overlook subtle but important signals that matter precisely because they touch a critical workflow or a high-trust account. The second half of this topic becomes clear once you understand what an LLM workspace really represents. A workspace is often a shared or managed environment where people interact with an LLM to summarize information, generate drafts, organize notes, or ask questions about technical material. In a busy security setting, it can be tempting to copy alert summaries, paste raw logs, upload screenshots, include ticket notes, and ask the tool to explain what is happening. That may feel efficient, but it raises a serious data handling question. If sensitive information is placed into that workspace without proper control, the analyst may have just moved confidential material into a place where access, retention, sharing boundaries, or downstream use are not fully understood. Data leakage in this setting does not always mean an attacker stole it directly. It can also mean information was exposed to the wrong internal audience, stored longer than intended, or handled in a way that violated policy, privacy, or trust expectations. Leakage often begins with convenience rather than with bad intent. Someone pastes a full alert export into an LLM workspace, even though only a few lines were needed for understanding. Someone includes account names, internal addresses, case details, cloud identifiers, or customer records because removing them feels slow in the moment. Someone uploads an entire incident summary to get help drafting a paragraph, forgetting that the document also contains details about detection gaps, system weaknesses, pending legal concerns, or sensitive investigative steps. In another case, a team member may work in a shared workspace and assume the conversation is private, even though others inside the organization may be able to access that material later. These are not dramatic movie-style breaches, but they are still forms of leakage because data moved beyond its proper boundary. Beginners need to understand that a helpful tool does not erase the responsibility to protect information. In many cases, the most damaging exposures happen through routine shortcuts that felt harmless at the time. The danger of that leakage is broader than simple embarrassment. Security data often includes information about internal systems, trust relationships, known weaknesses, response plans, and identities connected to privileged access. If too much of that material is exposed, even internally, it can increase risk by revealing exactly how the environment works and where it may be weak. In some situations, the data may also include regulated or highly sensitive information tied to employees, customers, partners, or operational activity. Even if no outside attacker is involved, poor handling can still create compliance problems, damage trust, and complicate incident response. There is also a practical issue during investigations. If too much raw data is shared into an LLM workspace, the organization may lose confidence in where that data traveled, who saw it, how long it remains available, and whether it can be fully removed later. For beginners, the key lesson is that data exposure is not only about theft. It is also about loss of control over where sensitive information goes and who can use it. Preventing LLM workspace data leakage starts with minimization, which means sharing only what is truly needed to answer the immediate question. If the goal is to understand whether an alert summary makes sense, an analyst often does not need to paste full case files, personal identifiers, or complete log exports. A safer approach is to reduce the content to the smallest useful amount and remove details that are not necessary for the analysis. That habit is powerful because it reduces harm even if a mistake happens later. It also encourages clearer thinking, since analysts are forced to identify which facts actually matter. Alongside minimization comes sanitization, meaning the removal or masking of sensitive names, addresses, identifiers, secrets, and operational details before information is placed into a workspace. For a beginner, these ideas are simple but important. The less sensitive material you move, and the more carefully you clean what must be moved, the lower the chance that convenience turns into exposure. Good protection also depends on boundaries, approvals, and role awareness. Not every tool should receive the same kind of data, and not every user should have the same freedom to move investigative material wherever they find it most convenient. Organizations need clear rules about which workspaces are approved for security use, what kinds of information may be entered, who may access resulting conversations, and how long that information is retained. A beginner does not need to design policy alone to understand its value. Policy creates a shared line between acceptable assistance and careless exposure. It also supports consistency, which matters because a team cannot rely only on personal judgment when under pressure. During a fast-moving investigation, people naturally look for shortcuts. Clear handling rules help them resist the urge to paste too much, share too broadly, or trust the wrong workspace simply because it produces quick answers and polished text. A practical way to bring these ideas together is to imagine an analyst reviewing an AI-generated SIEM summary that suggests a possible account compromise. The summary says there were failed logins, unusual access to a sensitive repository, and a later permissions change. Instead of accepting that explanation as proven, the analyst checks the underlying records, confirms the sequence, and asks whether the account normally behaves that way. While doing that, the analyst wants help drafting a short internal note about the event. A careless approach would be to paste raw logs, usernames, internal addresses, and case references into an LLM workspace to get a polished paragraph. A safer approach is to summarize the pattern in a sanitized way, remove sensitive identifiers, and keep the focus on the behavior rather than the confidential details. In that one scenario, good triage and good data handling work together. The machine assist remains useful, but the human preserves both analytical quality and information control. As we close, the central idea is that AI-assisted security work is most valuable when it strengthens human judgment instead of replacing it. SIEM outputs generated or organized with AI can help analysts move faster, see relationships sooner, and reduce overload. But they still need careful triage grounded in evidence, context, and business meaning. At the same time, LLM workspaces can support analysis and communication, yet they create real leakage risk if sensitive data is moved carelessly or shared beyond its proper boundary. The safest and most effective mindset is therefore balanced and disciplined. Trust the help enough to use it, question the output enough to verify it, and protect the data enough to keep convenience from becoming exposure. When beginners learn that combination early, they build a habit that fits modern security operations very well, because the future belongs not to blind trust in intelligent tools, but to thoughtful people who know how to use those tools without surrendering either judgment or control.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.